Maybe that ultimately was the appeal, that he could offer change for a party that wanted change without having to, I don't know, upend everything, Andrew.
Yes. Now, the speech, however, he certainly went beyond just, I'm the cool technocrat, I'm the guy who knows economic policy. I was struck by the, frankly, brutality of some of the language. Not only talking about Donald Trump, but talking about the Americans. As being the Americans want our resources. The Americans, we're going to keep our tariffs until the Americans show us respect. It's a country that can't be trusted. That's remarkable language for a prime minister designated of the country, if that's the right term to be using. Yeah. I'm not sure I'm wholly comfortable with it. It's one thing for a hot-headed newspaper columnist to write about that. But for a prime minister to be talking about that, he's playing a bit with fire. Point one. Point two is the way he talked about Pierre Poilievre, to be saying that he worships at the altar of Donald Trump and would kneel before him is pretty remarkably forceful language. I'm not sure I'm terribly comfortable with that, basically saying he'd sell out the country. But this is the kind of election we're going to be in.
Pierre Poilievre said that very thing about Mark Carney 2 days ago. So,
they're going to be giving back and forth. I'm not saying this in one part or the other, but it's going to be a brutal election.
Yeah. There's not going to be a Mr. Nice on this ballot from any of the four main leaders. But the main two leaders, I think the Liberals in the room reacted positively to this because that's what they want. Yeah. For 2 years, Pierre Poilievre has been throwing insults at them, as he has with other leaders. And that someone is standing up and saying, I'm not going to get pushed around by this aggressive politician. Yeah. It's kind of interesting to watch from the perspective of the people who voted for him. I think he delivered the speech that they wanted to hear.
Yeah.
And the French was okay.
Mm-hmm. Althea. It was his best speech so far of any of the speeches. And yes, his French was good. Mostly good. I would say, though, that I think he drew some lines that he needed to draw. But there's a risk because I think if as we expect, there will be a conservative bombardment of ads against Mark Carney, probably as of right now. Yeah. Not that there weren't already, but it's hard to go above that when you're trying to be positive. And he tried to suggest that he was going to be positive, and then he levied some of the things that Andrew talked about, worships at the altar of Donald Trump's and the contrast ads that they want to have with Donald Trump. But I do think like the lines that he drew are noteworthy. One being this idea that we all have to unify behind one candidate, and that candidate will be him. We need to unify as a country, but he was talking about himself basically, and that we cannot be divided like the Americans. And I think that speaks to a lot of Canadians.
No, I think so, yeah.
And then I do think that the way he talked about himself and his own experience is a way of protecting himself against perhaps the lack of experience he has as a political candidate, in saying that Mr. Poilievre, is an ideologue, basically, and he doesn't really understand how the economy works, but that I, as Mark Carney, have all this experience, and I can lead us to the promised land and fix all our problems.
Can I just say, we need to be united in the face of this threat. We should not translate that into saying you can only vote for one party.
Yeah.
And I'm really uncomfortable with that kind of language as well. That's what Doug Ford was peddling. It worked for him.
It worked.
It worked. But it's not a particularly democratic message.
No, but interestingly, he did talk about the Americans and Donald Trump, but he talked about Pierre Poilievre, not so much the Conservatives. And to win this election, the Liberals are going to need to get voters from the NDP, which at this point they are doing. By the way, if I were the New Democrats, I would be worried about Karina Gould's results, because she appealed to what could be the NDP side or the left flank of the Liberal Party, and no one came. Not even, New Democrats who could have signed up to do this. You look at the polls, you look at this result, and what you see is Canadians are going to be polarized between two options. They're going to have to choose, and they're choosing between Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney to deal with Donald Trump. That's basically where we're going.
Donald Trump has given the Liberals a gift, because they can run in both directions at the same time. Carney can tack to the right on policy to satisfy people who thought the Liberals went too far left, but he can also reel in New Democratic voters by saying, I'm the only one who can protect you from the Americans. So he's been given a gift.
Look what happened to the climate side of the cabinet. They all lined up behind Mark Carney, who very early on said, I'm going to scrap the carbon tax that you went to war for. and still they rallied to him.
Yes.
Why? Because he has shown more interest in the climate policy, of course, than Pierre Poilievre.
Or Chrystia Freeland.
Or Chris, yes, exactly.
Yes.
But they did it with ease. They're going around here very happy with the outcome, not worried about that agenda.
The reaction in the room when he announced he was, not announced, but said again he was going to scrap the carbon tax and scrap the capital gains increase was really interesting. Hearing them applaud for something they had only just brought in.
Yeah. Although not Justin Trudeau, I did look very closely. He didn't applaud Althea.
Yeah, well, I could understand why he wouldn't, because that's basically his legacy.
Thing, yeah.
I think the NDP is going to target certain ridings like we saw in Ontario, and I think that's going to be their state of the furniture strategy. On the attacking more to the right, which clearly he even suggested in his speech, the language that he used around pharmacare, he said for those who need it. That is different language than what Justin Trudeau has suggested that the direction that he's going in. So you already see that there's a movement going while still mentioning pharmacare and dental care. So you keep, core Liberals, and these are the things we ran on, and these are the things that are quite popular when you ask caucus members. There's definitely a movement